So let's do the obligatory best and worst of the year. The rules are simple. I'm only ranking games based on what I've reviewed and what were released this year. So basically games like Mario Maker or Rainbow Six won't be in this because I didn't review them, and neither will Strider or Minor Warfare as they were older and I decided to review them for one reason or another. Anyway, let's get to that list.
Number 5 on my worst of 2015 list goes to Yatagarasu Attack on Cataclysm. Now, I gave this game a recommendation initially and even posted a snowtorial for one of the characters, and while I like it as a fighting game in a critical light, the game isn't good. It's presented like an amateur hour Newgrounds game, and most glaringly is the problems it had with online functionality. This is a predominantly competitive two-player game on a PC. Working internet connections are a must. The hoops I had to jump through just to get the game to connect to one random person, and only one random person, were very annoying. It is possible to get it to work, and it isn't necessarily hard to do, but it shouldn't be on the consumer to make the product's promised internet viability work. I still like it as a fighting game, but as a consumer, I'd have to stay away from it. Conversely, number 5 on my best games of 2015 list goes to Albino Lullaby Episode 1. Honestly, this was a toss-up between this and Ori and the Blind Forest, but I give it to Albino Lullaby because it managed to give me a very unique experience and pull off horror intelligently without resorting to jump scares and gore. You can tell the people at Ape Law might be, educated or something. They seem to understand how suspense works and understand how to use it. They don't just take the lazy way out like Five Nights at Freddy's does, throwing random jump scares at people. Sure, once you're around the albinos enough, they cease to be scary and Buck's clicker breaks the game, but the last segment still had me quivering in my chair as when I first began the title. Lucius 2 comes in at number 4 of the worst. This game was a clusterfuck of ideas that didn't mesh together at all. I couldn't tell if this was supposed to be a serious or funny game, a scary or satirical game, or a puzzle or an action game. It really didn't fit any definitions. The only puzzle was unlock a door, and the only solution was find the guy who has the keys to the door. Granted, you had an environment to mess with to get the job done, but there were ways of getting those kills that completely broke the balance of the game. This game left me more confused than that time I was in Thailand hollering at that hot chick with an Adam's apple. Like number 5 of my best, number 4 was a hard choice. 3 through 1 were pretty easy, but there were so many good games I played this year in my reviews it was hard to decide. I'm gonna give it to This War of Mine, which is the first game I reviewed. I had a lot of fun playing this game. At first, it was really interesting to play through it as if I was one of the survivors. The game did a really good job drawing me in. However, when they patched it where I could insert my friends' photos into the game, I just started to troll everything, having one of my friends psychotically murder any other survivor encountered type of stuff. I think I may have gone a little crazy driving these representations of my friends to starvation and suicide due to my poor leadership. Oh well, it was fun. Hunter Primal is number 3 for the worst. One of the most boring games I've ever played. I would say it's more boring than my older videos, which is saying something. You have a game that wants you to explore its world, but it gives you no reason to do so. Everything looks like stuff we've explored in a million other games. With stock environments like this, the developer needs to incentivize the player to explore the land. It can even be something as simple as a naturally depleting health bar. Otherwise, if there's nothing to coerce me into, playing the game, you're banking on the audience hoping it's fun by default. Which it wasn't. Now, as I said, numbers 3 through 1 for the best were pretty easy. Doom and Destiny takes the number 3 slot without a doubt. Who knows, maybe I'm just easy to please. I liked the mimetic humor of the first game, which was a little lacking in the second, but the gameplay itself was overhauled and given its own identity. My only real complaint that I still have is how I can't rename the main characters, but I respect Ficus's stance on keeping them named because of narrative direction. Ukrainian Ninja is number 4 for the worst games of 2015. Now, I reviewed this back almost a year ago when I just started this whole show. I was very inexperienced back then and only had recently made the jump to PC from console, only recently learning all that is Steam. The more I learned, the more I went back and realized what a god-awful mess this game was. Nothing meshes. Every asset looks like it belongs in a completely different game, probably because the developer bought all the assets from a store and just shoved them in the same game. The basic controls are crap, the game animates terribly, and there are several floors of death that in no way are indicated to be one-touch deaths. This game is a giant mess. At least no one remembers it. Number 4 for the best has to go to Fallout 4. I mean, come on, you knew it had to be on this list somewhere. Now, my review of the game did not do it justice. I rushed through the main story so I could shell out a review in a somewhat timely manner, but I'm still playing it right now in my off time. Everything I said in my review I stand by, but there's just so much to do. Granted, a lot of it is the same, and there aren't nearly as many awesome characters and side stories as Fallout 3 and New Vegas, but there were still moments I had when I was really getting drawn into these side stories. That, and I'm trying to successfully nail each of my companions. None other than Batman Arkham Knight takes the grand spot at number 1 worst game of the year for me. I mean, seriously, how do you fuck up the Arkham games? It's like fucking up toast. You put the bread in the toaster. You push the lever down. You keep everything that made the older Arkham games awesome and just tell a new story. You don't shove in a completely contradictory gameplay mechanic to stealth and Batmaning. You don't take one of the highlight characters of the previous games and turn him into a boring, exposition-delivering, completely character-reversed version of himself. You don't include a new way to passively speed through the best parts of your gameplay. Hey, I know I kinda made a positive remark about the new fear attacks, but after going back to it one lonely night, I slowly started to realize the game was just speeding me past the parts of the game I liked so I could get to the parts of the game I hated. This game is something you would give to a game development student as an example of how sequels can screw it all up. Then, of course, there was the sheer disaster that was the PC release. The story was told in some very ingenious ways at times, but I still want to give a big middle finger to Rockstar and WB Games. And finally, my best game of the year goes to none other than Undertale. Look, I know, it doesn't have the same amount of nigh-endless content as Fallout 4, and maybe I'm just being a hipster here, but I respect Undertale far more than Fallout 4. The only reason I haven't pumped in as many hours is because, well, there aren't as many hours of gameplay. But it's kind of a quality over quantity sort of thing. As fun as Fallout 4 is, it's at the point I'm just sort of playing it. The quests feel repetitive and I'm just sort of going through the motions in this big expansive world, even though it's a very enjoyable world and I feel like I'm a citizen of the Waste just living in life. With Undertale, I'm getting emotionally invested in the characters and actually feeling some emotions. It's not perfect. There were a couple of characters in a segment I hated to go through, but the pros vastly outweigh the cons. But most importantly, the game still resonates so clearly in my mind, whereas outside of the main narrative of Fallout 4, that game just sort of blurs together at this point. So, overall, had a lot of fun this year reviewing games. I feel like there were way more fun games I enjoyed this year than bad. Or maybe just the good games were so good they made me forget about the really bad ones. But anyway, hey, looking forward to next year.